Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So one thing I learned this past year is how important it is and to to speak up for yourself at work, and not just for the things that you want, but also it's good to build rapport. I know it sounds strange, right? When you ask for stuff that you want at work, it actually builds rapport. What do I mean by that? Well, 5 years ago, I was teaching at a different school in Seattle, Washington, and I often folded. You know, I rarely did I almost never asked for a day off, and in fact, when we went into lockdown, I was working remotely, obviously, but I worked through COVID twice, and also one time our internet had cut out at my apartment. I think this would have been around June of 2020. And I went out looking for Wi Fi. Took my computer with me, running around town looking for Wi Fi. Got to remember, in June of 2020, you couldn't go into a Starbucks and sit down. You might hang around outside of the Starbucks to catch their Wi Fi, but then there would be no electricity. And so I would either look for somewhere outside that had electricity, which is really hard to find in Seattle. Seattle's got a huge homeless population, and putting an electrical outlet on the outside of a building is just a magnet for those kinds of people, right? And unfortunately, not everybody who does stuff like that behaves themselves well. So a lot of stores just won't keep the electrical outlets on the outside of the store, right? Um, I used to know quite a few places that had outlets on the outside of the building. You have to keep them secret, right? If you started telling people about, I use them in a very responsible way, I want to say, but some people might not, right? They leave garbage everywhere, loud noises. They invite people over, and before you know it, if you let too many people, if you let the wrong people know and they abuse it, it's gone, right? So when I would park and plug. You guys may remember I had a favorite park and ride garage, and I would reach an extension cord, and even when other people who were in my same boat came by, I very seldom wanted to make it seem that I was doing that, right? Because I didn't want them to ruin it, right? And obviously, I had to keep an eye out on people who wanted to kick me out. So I really had to keep my eye out for everybody who might see that, right? But anyways, now it's June of 2020, and I go back to my favorite haunts of doing that, even though I had a place to live now. And in retrospect, I could have just picked up the phone and called my boss and said, I'm sorry, our internet is out. It's going to be a while before somebody comes to look into this. And the difficulty is that you lose all sense of humanity when you start going above and beyond like that, right? And you forget your job for what it is, right? I think I was a worse employee when I was doing that, working through COVID, working through broken Wi-Fi, working through other life challenges, right? I had mental meltdowns during that time, and I continued to work through them as well. I had a time where very hastily lost my place due to issues outside of my control, and I went to work over that too. Right, I was literally I had just moved from a place into my car, and then I went to my favorite haunt where I had the electrical outlet, and I was working from there as well. Right, and instead of taking some time to regroup my thoughts, today I would take some time to regroup my thoughts. Right, but just a few weeks ago, I took a day off to attend a social event, and as I was attending the event, I really kicked myself. All the things that I had missed from years of not taking good care of myself. This past year, I had several serious illnesses. I got COVID-19 again one time, and also I was working with pewter, and I got seriously poisoned. I still don't completely understand why I got poisoned that one time. I've worked with pewter before, and also I had a serious mental meltdown a few weeks ago, as you guys have just witnessed that, and I learned the hard way that you could be a dedicated employee, but we're all a few health points away from complete chaos with our work, right? That's a tough lesson to learn, right? And also, I also learned the hard way that we live in, especially here in the United States. I'm not sure about other places around the world. If you lose your good health, you lose your status, right? So, for example, when I was grappling with COVID, I had gone to the store to pick up some comfort food, and I was living in West Phoenix at this time. The store there doesn't really have a good place to sit down. Outside, it was 120 degrees or so, and I tried to camp out at the store to eat. I was so dehydrated. I was so out of it, and I almost got chased out of the store. Actually, I think the security guard would have chased me out of the store, except that I was ill and he didn't want to come anywhere near me, right? And so I learned that if you lose your health, you lose your status, you could lose your job, you could lose a lot of other things, right? You could lose your connection to the world. And so trying to take care of your job to the detriment of your health is akin to trying to, on an airplane, trying to put on your kid's oxygen mask before your own, right? And unfortunately, I'm guilty of putting on other people's oxygen masks first. I really am, and to my own detriment, by the way. Let's go back to today at CAC, where I now teach at a community college. We have two different campuses, and I was negotiating with my boss about next semester. I want to teach at the other campus, and here's why. First of all, I have other commitments that are near to that campus. But more importantly, the campus that I'm teaching at is kind of run down. The classroom I was teaching at, we had to change midway through the semester because the projectors weren't working, and also the AC was cutting out. And finally, I know they're doing some good renovation, but they're renovating the break room, and now we have no kitchenette to wash up. So picture this: you got to eat lunch at the office because there's no time to run out, and then there's nowhere to wash your containers. You go to the bathroom, and they need to save water, so the faucets are automatic and they only let out a dribble. Now, a couple weeks ago, one of my colleagues had complained about my eating there, and at the time I apologized to my boss. But yesterday, as I'm negotiating, I tell my boss I hope they do some good renovations because the students definitely need good projectors. We don't need to be running around the campus looking for a good classroom in the middle of class, right? And also, I also noticed that it's very difficult to keep good hygiene there. There's nowhere to wash up, and you may remember a couple weeks ago, we had a little bit of difficulty with one of my colleagues complaining about my eating there. The food smelled or something like that, and I explained that I really like to be spending time with the students. I'm having to go away to eat, and and there's nowhere to wash up, and so I learned that by saying these things, it made me more human, right? Trying to hide and take care of all this on my own, and trying to even go fix the projectors myself, and make the whole thing seamless. Only a robot would do that, right? Not only do I not get what I want, but I also lose the respect that a human deserves in front of my boss because my boss will forget that I'm human to begin with, right? I A couple weeks ago when I was having the mental meltdown, I asked a couple of my colleagues if anybody could drive me to work. I was feeling really down, and I had multiple near miss car accidents within the space of a few weeks. And my colleagues couldn't do that. Actually, one of my colleagues suggested that because she had witnessed how badly I had melted down. It wasn't even just my driving; everything else was affected. And she thought I should have taken some time off of work, and she even offered to find out about it for me. Uh, but you know what? She had good intentions, but she didn't. Obviously, she's not me. Yeah, I probably could have taken time off work legitimately, but I really needed my work. That was the only bright spot in life. And today I'm recording this in mid-November. I'm feeling so much better than I was 2-3 weeks ago. I guarantee you, had I taken time off work today, I'd be way worse, right? Probably be institutionalized by this point, right? And it was misguided, but you know what? I'm still glad I had the conversation with her, because at least she knows I'm human. She misjudged, but at least she knows I'm human, right? So that's good. In fact, earlier yesterday, we had talked again, and she had asked if I was doing better and all that, and I said I was, and I used it as an opportunity to tell her about how I actually needed to work. I just needed to not drive, and she once again apologized that she wasn't able to help me. But that was good. You know what? Had my colleague asked me to drive her, it would be a difficult thing, right? Because I have a lot of crap in my car. I live with roommates. My room is not all that big. I sometimes use the car as my closet. I probably have to go dump everything either in here or go to my storage unit where I have my art, dump it in there, right? And then leave my room in a disaster for who knows how long, until my colleague is okay with driving. Um, if it were to come up, right? I'm not sure what I would do if I would help my colleagues, right? At the very minimum, even if I do help my colleague, I probably, depending on what the situation is, right? I probably ask, let's say my colleague had a similar mental meltdown, couldn't safely drive, right? Asked me if I could drive her to work. I'd probably say, you know what, I got a lot of stuff in my car. Assuming that she's mentally able to do this, do you want to come over to my house and help me unload all the stuff into my room? Right? Assuming she only had burnout and was unable to drive safely, I'd probably do that. Although that might be tricky, right? Some of the things in my car are, of course, you guys know how heavy they are, right? I probably wouldn't ask somebody who was having mental difficulty do that, right? And risk having them hurt themselves, right? So, but I would certainly want my colleague to know that this is something that I have to do, right? So, kind of, it's one of those things I'll have to play out when it does happen, right? I can't really say at the moment. But I think it's very important to let those around you know that you are human. And the best way to do that is to ask for things that you want. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.